They were stolen from their families as young boys and trained to fight as soldiers. Then they were released in the wild, and many of them were killed. It isn't a movie plot, it's a reality for the lost boys of Sudan. We're joined by former First Lady Julie Hines Mabus, who has taken on the challenge of helping the boys who were rescued from Sudan and brought to Mississippi. Also, Julie has brought along with her Martin Anyang. He is one of the lost boys, to tell us about the harrowing journey of freedom. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Ms. Hines, let's start with you. Let's start with the current situation in Southern Sudan. Give us some perspective on this autonomous region, because it is autonomous now, and why it's the focus of humanitarian efforts and the recovery.
The country of Sudan became a unified, independent country in the 50s, and shortly thereafter, the British, who were responsible with the Egyptians for creating a nation, left. And as soon as they left, the Arabs in the north, the Islamic Arabs in the north, decided to begin genocide, if you will, in the south, looking at the south as sexual slavery, as a feeding ground for ivory, it just basically something for them to go and take and use up. And they wanted in the north to change their culture, to make them Arabized, to make them give up their religion. They were Christian. And the people in the South said no, they would not roll over. And so from 1956 until 1973, these rebels fought. They fought for their freedom, they fought for their religious freedom, they fought for their freedom of their own culture, and also all the natural resources from the South, gold, diamonds, eventually oil, zinc. And these people fought hard until 2005, when the United States got involved, other Western countries got involved, and the North was forced to sign something called a comprehensive peace agreement, giving power sharing and resource sharing. There are a lot of winks going on. The sharing is not as it should be. There's still a lot of tension. And the most interesting thing that's in the process of happening right now is that in the year 2011, the South, these are the black Christians with all the natural resources, have the ability to become their own country. So in the mix of all this, you have in the western part of Sudan the area of Darfur. And Darfur, in some ways, was a cynical effort on the part of the northern government and the Chinese, who were still drilling the oil, to keep chaos going. With this 2005 peace agreement, Chinese weren't happy with that, the North wasn't happy with that, and they wanted to kind of keep some kind of peace, some kind of chaos going, and that's what Darfur is. It's a continuation of genocide.
And Martin is with us, one of the lost boys of Sudan. Can you tell us your story in simple terms?
I just don't know where to begin, but I got the longest story.
How long have you been in Mississippi, Martin?
I've been in Mississippi for almost 6 years. I came here in 2001.
And how did you get here?
That was an organization, like UNHCR organization. I was in Kenya for about 8 years, as an open year, and I left Kenya in 2001, came to Mississippi.
And were you forced into military?
Yeah, when I was in Sudan, yeah.
How old were you when that happened?
About 10, 12 years, something like that.
Julie, you went to Southern Sudan this past summer with the Sudan Reconstruction Skills Search Project. What was the purpose of that trip?
This organization that we founded, this foundation, is to do two things. It's to support the kids over here while they are finishing their education. But then, as they are getting Martin's age, they want to go back home and find their families. Martin hasn't seen his family in nearly 20 years. And so we're also helping them go back financially. And then the third thing is to raise the awareness of the opportunities that exist between the United States and Southern Sudan, because it was an enclave of Christian support that looks to the United States as a mentor. And so it's to ready these young boys and girls who were originally supposed to be warriors. And what happened, these boys, when they were 4 and 5 years old, were taken to Ethiopia to a military camp.
4 or 5 years old?
Yes, ma'am. They left Sudan. How old were you when you left?
Six?
Yeah.
He was 6 when he left. They walked 1,000 miles across Sudan into Ethiopia, into a friendly military camp where they were to be the next soldiers. 4 years later, Ethiopia had a coup, and things flip-flopped. And soldiers came running toward them.
So, yeah. There was war in Ethiopia between the government. I think that between the rebel and the government of Ethiopia, and the rebel didn't want us to stay in Ethiopia after they overthrew the government, so we came back to Sudan, and we stayed in Sudan for a while. Then the northern part that we came back to Sudan, and they sent the military up after us, and then we went back. We went to Kenya.
It sounds like you spent most of your life traveling.
Yeah.
How many Southern Sudanese refugees live in Mississippi?
There are about 60. There are some 4,500 around the country. Catholic Charities and Lutheran Church, the big resellers of refugees around the world. We have great Catholic Charities here. And so we were one of about 20 cities that had these children come.
No, we've talked about the boys, the lost boys. What about the girls? What about the Southern Sudanese girls? What happened to them?
Some came over here. You know, when the war broke out, sometimes our culture is different with the mother culture. So, the family don't allow the girl to live with the girl when the boy would live. There were few girls.
The girls stayed with their families,
Yeah,
and the
but
boys were taken from their families?
Yeah, but some few girls came to the United States as a lost girl.
And Martin, it's been 20 years since you've seen your family.
Yeah.
Do you know that they're still there?
Yeah, I find out the time I came by, I found out they were alive. I found out in 2005 they were alive, and I didn't get a chance to see them.
Obviously, we can't relate. We can't relate at all to what you've been through in your life. I feel I have to ask you, Julie, in Mississippi, it's the poorest state in the country. Poverty is a way of life for many who live in the Delta. So why focus your efforts in Africa, halfway around the world, or what makes you so passionate about this issue?
It happened, it came at a point in my life in 2000 when I was going through some really tough times, and lost custody of my children, and changed churches and started singing in the choir at St. Andrews. And in January of 2001, the doors of the church opened up, and some 65 very, very tall, very, very thin, very black, beautiful young adults, mostly men, walked into the back of the church. And I said, I don't know what happened, but something has just happened to change my life. And they first became like children to me, but then, it's never enough. I have to understand. I have to understand their culture. I have to understand their history. And I realized that they weren't just going to come over here and integrate in our society. They were meant to be the soldiers of Southern Sudan, but they ended up being the brain trust that will go back and build the country.
Is there a website or a phone number people can access?
We have a great, it's just up, so I'm so proud. It's www.sudanreconstruction.com. And my phone number is 601-214-8384. And it's you can see a little of the history of Southern Sudan. You can see about our trip to Southern Sudan last summer, which was magic.
All right, Julie Hines Mabus and Martin Anyang, thank you very much for coming in, for sharing your story.
Thank you.
And best of luck to you.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Mississippi Edition here on MPB Think Radio.